The week before winter break can be a great time for some wintry poetry. A mini unit like this is flexible, seasonal, and easy to fit around whatever else is going on in those final frantic, fun, festive days. You may have favorites of your own to incorporate, but today I just want to share 3 quick, creative ideas for your winter poetry toolkit. Use them before winter break or use them right after. Welcome to the Spark Creativity Teacher Podcast, a podcast for English teachers looking for more. More creativity, more engagement, more joy, and no more scripted curriculum, lesson planning ruts, or boring book lists. I'm Betsy Potash, and I'm honored you're trusting me to help. You're not alone on this creative journey anymore. Okay, let's dive in with winter poetry activity number 1, which is to try a holiday-themed lipogram. A year ago, I didn't know what a lipogram was, but then Melissa Alter-Smith of Teach Living Poets introduced me to this super fun genre, and I'm totally hooked. A lipogram is just a poem in which a poet avoids a certain letter or letters of the alphabet. But what Melissa suggested to me and did with her students was to have them avoid all vowels except one. So their poem just has to center around A, E, I, O, or U, and it cannot use any of the other ones. Now, it may sound like it would be really easy, but in fact, it's super duper hard. I have designed some free curriculum for this project inspired by the basic lipogram set that I designed with Melissa last year, but this one has a holiday twist. It has wintry pictures, kind of fun, snowy prompts. So let me walk you through how it would work for you. Your students would all choose a vowel. Maybe it's A, maybe it's O. In my example, in the curriculum set that you can get, it's O. And they're going to be writing a holiday poem using only that vowel. Now, they can write it about any holiday they choose or just sort of a snowy, wintry experience. But along the way, they're going to do 3 quick brainstorming activities to help them to generate enough words with their chosen vowel to write a poem. It really is harder than it may sound. And if they don't do the brainstorming activities, they probably wouldn't be able to write a poem. So here's what I suggest. There's 3 different brainstorming ideas. I would suggest having them move around the room to find different partners to work with at each step. And if they ever just can't find a partner who's doing their letter, then they do that step on their own. In the first prompt, they just start by brain dumping any words they can think of with their letter. They'll probably get 5, 10, 15, who knows. You can set them a challenge. You can say like, oh, if anybody can get 17, I am going to be shocked. I want to hear about it if you get to 17. And then if any partnership is like, oh, Miss Potash, we got to 17, then you can say, oh my gosh, everybody, did you see Bill and Julia got to 17? That's amazing. Who else can get to 17? Or like, oh, can you get to 25? And just let them kind of finish their brainstorming. And when you feel like the energy has passed, tell everybody to stop, mill about the room, find another partner who has that letter, the shared letter for their poem. And then for the second brainstorming exercise, they're going to be looking at these wintry pictures. You can project them on your board or you can pass out the handout I made for you. And they're going to look at a picture, choose a picture they like, and start again, brainstorming words that have their chosen vowel inside. And if they think of everything they can think of for one picture, they can go to another picture. If they think of everything they can think of for that picture, they go to another picture. But if at any time they just get on a roll, they can just keep going. They can write as many words as they can during the session. Then you're going to say, musical chairs, switcheroo, stand up, go find another partner for the last brainstorming session. And for the last one, again, you can project the handout on your board or you can give everybody a copy. They're going to have this list of different emotions, and they can choose the emotions that they want to have guiding their poem. If they want to have a big dose of anticipation and hope in their poem, they can use those as inspiration prompts for coming up with words with their vowel. vowel. If they want to have awe and gratitude and joy and surprise, they can use those to guide them. Or they can just brainstorm whatever they can think of for every single emotion on the list and decide later. Now, when they're done with all these brainstorming activities, they're going to have their brain dump of words around their vowel. They're going to have their picture-inspired words, and they're going to have their emotion-inspired words. And I think that they will find, as I found, that just starts to turn into a poem in their mind. You start to see the connections between the different words you've come up with, and you're thinking about those wintry pictures, and you're thinking about all the emotions, and a poem just sort of erupts. And so at this point, you're going to give them 5 or 10 minutes to get going on their poem. And you're just going to keep writing until they seem to be mostly done. And then you're going to say, the standard, let's wrap it up, guys. 1 or 2 more minutes, finish your last lines. And then, your workshop is coming to a close. You can finish it off however you want. You can have them share with a partner and star their favorite lines, share with another partner, or share in small groups, or you can invite people to read their favorite line or couple lines, or you can even, if they're willing, let them just flip their poem toward the middle of the room and all stand up and walk around and read everybody's poem. Okay, number 2, I want to talk about digital poetry tiles. This has long been a favorite activity of mine, and I have created a lot of kits like this, some of which you can download on my website, some of which are in my teacher membership, The Lighthouse, but digital poetry tiles are such fun, and I'm going to walk you through the process of making some of your own in case you want to do your very own original wintry themed poetry with digital poetry tiles. It's not a complicated process. It's a little bit time consuming, so you might want a mug of cider and a holiday movie on if you're going to make your own. But here's how you can do it. You're just going to eventually want to have your digital poetry kit on Google Slides. So for me, I open up a Google Slide and I change the sizing to be 11 inches wide and 8.5 inches down. And I do this with every kind of curriculum I design because I never know if I'm going to want to print it. Right? Sometimes I do 8.5 by 11. Sometimes I do 11 by 8.5, but it's definitely going to be printable for me. If you're in Europe, you can use the A4 paper size. If you're somewhere else, use the size that works for your country's printer. So once you have that set up, then I like to design the background for my digital poetry kit in Canva. And what I'm looking for right now for winter is something wintry. So I'm going to type in something like watercolor snow, or I'm going to put a black background and then overlay snowflakes all around it as a frame and drop on a moon, or I'm going to make little snowmen in the corner and then a blue watercolor background with snow piles on it. Something that will help kids think about the feeling, the mood of winter. So once you have designed some backgrounds in Canva or in slides, you're going to drop them into your slide deck, and you're just going to want to start with one. So make yourself a lovely slide with a snow pile and a snowman or whatever. And then next you need the words. So for digital poetry tiles, they're really inspired by those wonderful magnetic poetry kits that you see on people's fridges. And the idea is the same. Kids will be moving the poetry tiles around just like they would physically on the fridge. They're just going to drag them around the slide. And so there are a few ways you can make the words. There's the more time-consuming way, which is what I do, in which case you're going to create a slide or a Canva canvas and type your word in and make it look like just a little word on a little white rectangle, and then duplicate it 100 or so times and put in different words. And then you're going to export all those as little image files, which you will then drop onto your slide for students to drag around. Now, as a shortcut, you could also just insert a text box directly onto your slide, type in your word in black, and then put on the white highlighter. So in this case, or even, if you want them to be a different color, a bit different than the magnetic poetry style tiles that you would see on a refrigerator, you could do it in any color. But you want the word to pop against that rectangle in another color. If you go this way, then students they're just dragging around little text boxes instead of dragging around little images of words. But either way, it's essentially the same thing. And what you're going to find is that it's very inspiring to see all these words on the slide for students and to see a background, and they start to visualize something in looking at all the different words you've chosen. For me, for winter, I might choose like winter, sky, quiet, cold, ice, lights, moon, sparkle, footprints, crackle, crunch, pine trees, cardinal, right? We all have our own imagery of winter. Wherever you are, wherever you grew up, your imagery may be vastly different. But you're trying to create words that students can knit together to create a poem. And they're just going to drag the words around until they have a poem that they like. And then they're going to get rid of all the other words. And so it's really fun. And I think you'll find the great thing about it is that once you make the effort to make a kit, you never have to make it again, right? You can use it time after time, and it just becomes this great resource for your classroom. Okay, the third and final activity I want to talk about is doing a poetry one-pager for a wintry poem. I don't know if you know, but the Poetry Foundation has a really lovely collection of winter poems, and I'm sure there are other collections of wintry poems out there that you could search for. You could let students choose from a variety of winter poems, find one that they like, or I'm going to suggest, because I really like it, Mary Oliver's poem White Eyes, which is beautiful. It has a lovely language choices and a gentle, really intentional structure that gives students plenty to dig into without being super overwhelming. And so I've linked that in the show notes today, as well as some examples of a one-pager with that particular poem, but you can do it with any poem. Maybe you've tried one-pagers for novels, and so you have a little bit of experience with this, or maybe this will be your first one-pager. Either way, a one-pager is a great activity to help students dig into a poem and then show their understanding through both words and visuals, which, as you know, I feel is a skill vital to many types of real-world communication these days. I think it's really helpful, especially if your students are pretty new to one-pagers, to share a template with them. So you're gonna give them a piece of paper that's kind of already broken up into sections, has some different shapes on it to help guide them. And then you're gonna give them a list of components that you want to see on the one pager. So here are some examples, but yours could look vastly different from this. Whatever targets the kinds of things that you want to work on with your students with poetry, that's what you want for your different components. So for example, I might say, I want to see a border of imagery from the poem. I want to see that my students understand that Mary Oliver is using specific imagery, and I want to see that referenced. Maybe I would say I want to see poetic devices that students notice, and I want each device to be illustrated by a quotation that demonstrates it. Maybe in one section of the one page, I want to see connections between the poem and other poems we've studied, or other pieces of art that students have seen, or books that they've read. Or maybe I want to see connections between the poem and current events, or connections between the poem and students' own lives. Maybe I want to see themes from the poem. Maybe right in the middle, I want to see what theme students think is most important in the poem. And I want to see them illustrate those themes a little bit with quotations, with their own words, with imagery. Maybe I want to see some analysis of the poet's style and some examples of that style. Or I want to see some key symbol from the poem illustrated. If your students want full scaffolding, or I guess if you feel your students need full scaffolding, then you want to pair each of these components to a specific place on your one-pager template. This is like really strong scaffolding. You say, I want to see a theme in your own words in the middle with a visual illustration of it, and I want the visual illustration to be supported by a meaningful color choice, and here's the meaning behind three colors that you could use or something like that. That is like really strong scaffolding for students who are super nervous about doing a visual assignment. The next level would be components and a template, but you don't knit them together. You don't actually say, I need the symbols in the upper left-hand corner and I need the style in the bottom right-hand corner. You just say, I need images, I need style, I need themes, and you give them the template and they make their choices. The next step after that is that you give them those components, but they have a blank paper and they can do it however they want. And the next and final step would be to start to reduce those components, but to ask for an in-depth look at the poem and say, like, you can choose to focus where you want to focus, kind of like if you were writing a paper. You don't have to cover every aspect of the poem, but show me what's really meaningful about it to you, and illustrate that with this one pager. So you can see learning to do a one pager can have many layers. It's not just like you automatically become the master the first time you do it. And so it's something that students can work on over the course of the year. Okay, my friend, now you've got 3 fun wintry possibilities for the coming days as we move toward break. I hope you're going to try the holiday lipogram, winter poetry tiles, or the winter poetry one-pager. Or maybe that you're going to try all 3. And when you do, you know I'd love to see how it goes. Remember to tag me anytime on Instagram at NowSparkCreativity so I can come and cheer you on. Thanks so much for joining me today to talk about winter poetry options for these busy weeks leading up to break, or maybe for the weeks after break. Until next time, take care of yourself and stay creative.